Several unions, including the South African Democratic Teachers Union and Naptosa, have called for the suspension of all schooling until the end of the COVID-19 peak. Grades R, 6, 7, 11 and 12 have so far gone back to school as government tries to save the academic year. This amid the surge in infections in the country. South Africa currently has 147,000 active cases, with 4,300 deaths reported. Education activist Hendrik Makaneta is among the people who've been monitoring the situation as far as the resumption of schooling is concerned. He's joining me now by phone from Centurion. Hendrik, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for being on the show. Let's start with your reaction to this call by unions who are saying, call everything off until the worst of COVID-19 has passed.
Yes, indeed. Tembekile, we believe that the position that was taken by the unions yesterday is the correct position, in a sense that we have always called on the minister to be very careful during this difficult period of COVID-19. It is for this reason that we believe that the lives of our learners are paramount, and of course the duty of care also warrants that learners should be kept safe at all times. Not only learners, but also teachers. And of course, we think that, the minister is sitting in a very difficult position, because when you walk around in townships, you find that, learners are unsafe even at home. They don't even put on masks. They play around. And, there was a view that when they are at school, they are much safer. But because of this winter season where the peak is also getting problematic, we think that it is the correct move. Now the ball is in the court of parents. We need to call upon parents to take an active role in ensuring that learners are safe when they are at their homes.
At this point then, given everything that you are saying, what could Minister Motshekga possibly say to convince unions that continuing with schooling through the COVID-19 peak would be the right decision?
Well, the minister, as you know, is advised by scientists, and as we know that, young children who are at school are usually the carriers. They are actually the transmitters of this particular pandemic. It is not a dangerous pandemic for kids as such, and that is why the decision was taken for schools to reopen. Also in line with the international best practice. If you saw the schools in the UK and other countries, they decided to reopen the schools in the midst of COVID-19. But we think that, the union also has a point, and let us just wait until a point where this COVID-19 subsides in terms of the infection rates, so that at least it's September. That is what we have called for even initially. But the only concern is grade 12. Remember that the paper that is going to be written by the grade 12 learners has already been said. There's no way in which it can be changed. We think that at least let the grade 12 learners remain, but they should be taken at least on a camp so that they can be able to finalize their curriculum. Because as we speak, they have already completed more than 50% of their curriculum. I'm talking about grade 12 learners. But as to the other grades, there is no point in keeping them at school at this time. We think that government should find alternative ways, of making sure that they follow the higher education model, where they are able to avail resources such as data so that learners can even be able to learn online when they are at home.
But the issue with the online option, Hendrik, is that, and we've discussed this at length across the various platforms, is that not every South African is able to go ahead with that sort of teaching, be it due to a lack of infrastructure, poverty. How do you get around that, especially for a crucial grade like matrics?
Well, all that we need is the political will from government. If you check the terrain of higher education, there are many students who also don't have the necessary resources. But the Department of Higher Education has availed those resources in the form of laptops as well as data. They get around 30 gigs per month, and they are able to carry on with teaching and learning. But the challenge with a DBE is that it may be a lot of money to spend in as far as laptops are concerned. But we believe that every household, almost every household, has got a smartphone, a smart cell phone, and government should just ensure that they avail, data, so that connectivity can be availed to even those learners in rural communities as well as in townships, so that they don't just sit at home and not do anything during this time. COVID-19 is something that we, as the President has said, we might have to learn to live with, and we need to find alternative ways of managing our education. But if everything else fails, then we need to go back to the proposal that was made by the learned Professor Jonathan Johnson, that at least for other grades, let us just progress them to the next grade in 2021. But let us rather save matriculants, because that is the most crucial part of learning and teaching.
And one of the motivations that Minister Motshekga has outlined for this return to class is that there is research that shows that in South Africa, often, especially in poorer communities, when children are taken out of the classroom for extended periods of time, a lot of them don't come back. That then leads them on a downward spiral, because they then become people who battle with unemployment due to a lack of qualification and that sort of thing. How worried about that possibility are you currently?
Well, it is true, Tembekile, that dropout rates have been the order of the day throughout our terrain of education. But we must admit that COVID-19 has devastated the entire terrain of education, not only in South Africa, but throughout the world. And of course, we may have to live with the consequences of this pandemic, which affects also other areas. The economy as well is affected, not just education. And let us do whatever we can to salvage the little that is left of the academic year. As we speak now, we are already, in the end of term 2. And of course, it is going to be a very difficult challenge, not only for the minister, but for all of us as stakeholders who are actively involved in this terrain of education to manage the academic year. If needs be, we may have to spill over to 2021, during which intervention mechanisms should be found to make sure that learners are able to cover for lost ground. But as to those who might want to drop out, we will also appeal once again to the parents, because education on its own, it's a triangle. It requires the involvement of parents, teachers, and learners. And if one part or if one point does not do their part, then we will sit with problems that can affect learners in the long run. But at the end of the day, it is up to learners themselves to also, create a better future for themselves.
Okay. Quick final one then, Hendrik. I want to ask you about pupils who then rely on schools, not only as a place of learning, but this is their place of safety. It's also where they go for nutrition. A lot of young people in this country going hungry at the moment. What becomes of them if we say go ahead with the closure of the schools until after the COVID-19 peak?
Well, the issue of nutrition is a very important issue. We know that, it is part and parcel of the poverty alleviation program. And we think that that should not stop. Government must find a way to make sure that even when learners are not at school, they are at least able to access those meals. I think that we've seen it with recent developments where people were given food parcels and so on. And I think that that should carry on. It can't be correct that learners from poor communities are not able to access those meals. After all, those meals have already been budgeted for, and even if learners remain at home, we need to collaborate with councillors in communities to make sure that we identify, especially those who are in need, and let them receive these meals on a daily basis so that they can be able to survive these difficult challenges that are also faced at their homes.
Hendrik Makaneta, education activist, thank you so much for speaking to us this afternoon.